Yep, so we have lecture 4, education from the demand side. This is the outline for today. We have overview and the existing evidence from developing countries. So basically we will discuss about 2 papers and they explain some of the problem with the education in developing countries, especially from the demand side. So the motivation for this discussion is first, education and human capital are essential inputs for economic growth. Okay, because it's an essential input for economic growth, so it's very important. That's why we have to make sure education, right for education can be accessed by everyone. This is based on paper by Lucas 1990, Barrow 1991, Menkyu, Romer, and Weil 1992. Improving education outcome is an important policy priority. Wait a minute. Improving education outcome is an important policy priority for the central government, regional government, NGO, and also the donor. Okay. Then main research question. There are 2 main policy questions regarding education based on Muralidharan 2017. The first one is how should we increase school enrollment and attendance, and how should we improve learning outcomes. Things to underline here: the enrollment in education, it's actually kind of depend on the parents, okay? Because parents, they are the one who enroll their children to school. So if some parents, they may think that the cost of education exceeds its benefit, then maybe they will not enroll their children in school. And then regarding the learning outcomes, one of the key for learning outcomes is the school, okay? So the quality of the school, even though also the ability of the children, but also the school, whether the school is available or not, what's the ratio between teacher and student, and does the school have the facility like maybe computer, maybe even whiteboard, and maybe books. So it all will affect the learning outcomes from the children. Okay. For the student, I mean, not only children. So we're going to talk about school participation and attendance. One of the most famous paper about human capital and education is by Gary Becker, 1962, and also Ben Porat from 1967. So according to them, household invest in additional year of education if they think that the benefit of the education is going to exceed its cost. Well, the problem is, first of all, it's not very easy to prove this, right? So the hard evidence that the benefit of education exceeds exceeds its cost. It's not very easy to prove. You know why? Because the benefit of education or return on education, it's going to take years, right? It's not that you go to school today and then you can feel the benefit instantly. No, you will feel the benefit in the future. Maybe in terms of higher wage, maybe in terms of better well-being, better jobs, and things like that. So that's why for some people, like for example, if they live under the poverty line, for example, so the opportunity cost of going to school is missing hours of work. So that's why they may think that the benefit of the education is going to be smaller than its cost. So that's why they don't enroll and they do not enroll to school. Okay. Okay, so we're going to discuss about intervention for the school participation and attendance. So the intervention is, the interventions are improve immediate benefits and reduce the costs. Okay. So existing evidence on developing countries. So we're going to discuss about the evidence about, the evidence regarding education in developing countries. Okay, so the demand side intervention. So these are household may suboptimally demand too little education. That's what happened in developing countries. Household may suboptimally demand too little education. Why? These are the reason. First of all, not accounting for spillovers. So the illustration for this is, for example, if in a village, there are kids who go to school and then there are kids who do not go to school. The truth is, those kids who go to school, they can share the knowledge that they get from the school to other children who don't go to school. For example, that's in a small scope. It's the spillover from the education. And when people go to school and get proper education, when they are adults, they can do something that will benefit the society. That's also spillovers of education. So when people miss those potential spillovers, people tend to think that education is not the most important thing for them. So therefore, they will demand too little education. And then also discounting the future at higher rate. What does discounting mean? So basically, this is when someone think that because they go to school, then the potential of doing work today, so the opportunity cost of going to school is going to miss time to go to work. And then if they think they will miss work because they go to school, and then they will think that it will affect their income in the future highly. So, but it's not true, right? Because when you go to school and then you obtain more education, the truth is in the future you will get a better job with better wage. So that thing, when they do discounting the future at higher rate, it means that they think the opportunity cost of going to school is too high because it will hurt the chance for them to obtain income now instead of going to school. Okay, and then the third one is incorrect beliefs on return to education. So this is a bit similar than discounting the future at higher rate. So when people do not really understand that return on education is going to potentially give them a better well-being, then they may be reluctant to enroll their children to school, or they themselves might be reluctant to go to school. And then credit constraint. This is where people cannot afford education because of lack of money, of course, because they have other needs, like for example, for food, for health, for other things, so they cannot afford education. And then less access to credit market. This is where they cannot rely on other party or institution to finance their school. So like you cannot go to bank, for example, to take a loan for school. So this is the access of to credit market. Okay. By the way, about the education loan, actually in developed countries like the USA, they have student loan, So when someone wants to go to school, to university, but they don't have money, they can take a student loan. So basically they can obtain money to pay for the tuition fee. And then after they graduate, they will pay those loan from their future income. Okay, but the truth is, student loan in the US is quite high, but people still take student loan because they believe that if they go to university or higher education, their future is going to be better. Okay. Is it true? Well, it's debatable, right? In case of student loan in the US. Okay, anyway, let's move to the conditional cash transfer. One of the intervention that's introduced to induce enrollment in school is conditional cash transfer, or CCT. Cash transfer program targeted the poorer households so they will get the transfer, they will get the cash under this condition. So the conditionality is children are enrolled in school and maintain minimum attendance rate. So the children in that household, they must go to school and they must hold minimum attendance rate. Like for example, they have to be in school or they have to attend school minimum at 75% rate. Okay. And then it has been proven that CCT has significant positive impact on school enrollment and attendance. This is a paper by Fisbane and Shadi, who conclude that CCT has significant positive impact on school enrollment and attendance. Well, it makes sense, right? Because the household, the poor household, they need the CCT. And if the condition is only to enroll their children to school, then they will encourage their children to go to school so they can get the cash transfer. Okay. And then other than CCT, this is other kind of intervention, which is better information about education to students and parents. Like I said before, enrollment to school, actually it kind of depend on the parents, whether the parents is going to enroll their children to school or not. Okay. Parents make schooling decision based on perceived but not actual returns. So the perceived return here, it might be misleading, because perceived returns is based on individuals' information, right? So if someone do not have complete information about what the potential return on education is, they may think that you don't need to go to university. Even after high school, you can just go to work. That's because they don't know that the university can help them to get better job in the future. So it's what it means to have perceived returns instead of actual returns. The issue is that parents misperceive these returns. Yeah, sometimes parents misperceive these returns, and then parents misperceive these returns owing to limited or imperfect information. So there is a very good paper by Jensen, 2010, in Dominican Republic. In this paper, Jensen tried to do an intervention, and the treatment for the intervention is giving parents better information. Okay, let's check what's going on in that paper. So the information on return to schooling, this is based on Jensen, 2010. So there is a puzzle or enigma in Dominican Republic. It seems that 80% to 90% of youth complete primary school, but only 25% to 30% completed secondary school. Okay, so this is SD and this is SMP, ya. And then earning difference between secondary and primary school graduates is 40%. That's really high, okay, between the primary school graduate and secondary graduate. And then when Jensen do the research, there are some potential explanation. The first one is poverty and credit constraints. So basically people cannot afford education. And then the high discount rates. So they think the opportunity cost to go to school is too high. And then the underestimation of the returns. They think that the returns on education is not worth it. Okay, so that's why they don't go to secondary school, only primary school. Okay. And then after that, there are some information here. In the US, high school seniors and college students are well informed of the return to schooling. This is an evidence based on the following paper by Smith and Powell, 1990, by Bates or Bates, I have no idea, 1996, Dominitz and Mansky, 1996, Avery and Kane, 2004, and Roos, 2004. What about students from low-income countries? Okay, if the students from developed countries, they well informed about the return to schooling, then what about the low-income countries? Well, the truth is, students from low-income countries might not be that well informed regarding the returns to schooling. we see that the rate of dropout of school when young is high in low-income countries. Why? Yeah, because they would rather be working now and earning money today instead of going to school, which is understandable. If you live under the poverty line, it could be the case. And then counselor to provide information about return. So there is no one or no counselor they can ask to provide information about returns. So if you are in the US, for example, you will have at least a school counselor. School counselor, maybe in Indonesia, it's kind of like guru BK, but not really guru BK. So it's a counselor where you can ask what potential you have and where to go from that stage. For example, if you are in middle school, and then you go to your counselor and then ask the counselor where you should go for high school, given your ability, given your minat and bakat and your grade, and then there is always someone to ask. Okay, the counselor. But in the low-income countries, usually counselors they don't exist. Okay. And then the third one is there is no labor market data in the low-income countries. So if you have labor market data, then you can kind of see what's the potential that you can get in the future. Like for example, now you study economics. What's the potential job you can have in the future? Like for example, economists. Then you can look up in the labor market data, what's the average economists make, how much they get paid. Or maybe you want to be a consultant in the finance, for example. And then you can look up in the labor market data what the average consultant make in terms of income and things like that. But if that kind of data doesn't exist, then how are you going to know about that? It's kind of hard, right? It's kind of unrelatable when it doesn't exist in the low-income countries. Okay, so this is the intervention that Jensen did in the paper. So basically, the intervention is giving better information, and then for the control group, the information is stay the same. Okay, this is better information. This is the same. No, I mean the information that they already have, so no change. Okay. Okay, so this is what Jensen get from the paper. Before we end, I would just read this for you. Before we end, I would like to provide you with some information from our study. In January, we interviewed adults living in this community all over the country. This is the Dominican Republic. And we asked them about many things, including their earnings and education. And then we found that average earning of men 30 to 40 years old with only a primary education was 3,200 pesos per month. And the average income of a man the same age who completed secondary school but did not attend university was about 4,500 pesos per month. So the difference between workers with and without secondary school is about 1,300 pesos per month. Workers who finish secondary school earn about 41% more than who don't. Okay, and the people who go to university earn about 5,900 pesos per month, which is about 85% more than those who only finish primary school. So the difference of income is very high in here, right? The difference between primary school and secondary school, that's like the difference between SD and SMP. It's about 41%. And then the difference with those who go to university is 85%. That's really a lot, okay? So let's continue. So it is important to note that incorrect information may make recipients worse off. That's true, yeah. Any false information will make everyone worse off, will make any recipient of that information worse off. Information on return to schooling based on mean salary and regression may be incorrect on average. Why? So you know, Minserian regression is where you're going to regress return on education on the explanatory variable. Why is it incorrect on average? Because the Mincer equation suggests that each additional year of education produce a private or individual rate of return to schooling about 5 to 8% per year, ranging from low 1% to more than 20% in some countries. So return to schooling or return on education is basically the income, okay? And then according to Mincer, it should be only about 5 to 8% with with the difference of 1 year of education. But you see in Dominican Republic, from SD to SMP, it's like the difference between SD and SMP is only 1 year, yeah, right? You finish SD and then you go to SMP. Even when after you finish SMP, it's only 3 years apart, but the difference is about 41%. And then with the university, it's about 85%. So this is much more higher than what the Mincerian regression suggests. Okay, so this is a very special case in Dominican Republic. And then Jensen here, Jensen thinks that the problem why this happens is because the misinformation regarding the return to schooling. Okay. Returns to schooling are different between average students and students induced to stay by the information. Okay, so one more, not problem actually, but one more thing about the Mincerian regression. What the regression do here, they just compare the average students. But those average students, they typically have the same level of information. Meanwhile, in Dominican Republic, here, the people or the students in Dominican Republic, they have different level of information. So those who go to university, they obviously have much better information regarding return to education. But those who don't even go to middle school, they have either they don't have enough information regarding return on or regarding return on education, or they have misinformation about the return on education. Okay, so in here we actually compare not only the average student but also students with different level of information. Okay, meanwhile the Mincerian regression, they compare average student with typically same level of information. Okay, so this is what Jensen did. With the intervention. So basically the intervention, like I mentioned before, is information treatment. So they give better information to the, I'm sorry, I kind of forget, either to the household or to the students. You have to check with the paper. But what I want to underline is the treatment is the better information. So this is the treatment effect for the full sample, per household, and then least per household. And then after given the treatment, the students that return next year is about 4%, yeah, higher than before. And then after given the treatment, those who finish school, oh, it's not significant in here. And then additional years of schooling, the effect is about 20% here. And then perceived returns, okay. Oh, wait a minute. I kind of forget what the perceived returns in here, but for the return next year in the poor household, it's not significant, but it should be about 0.6, and then finish school, not statistically significant either. There is no statistically significant treatment in the poor household. And then in the least poor household, those who return for next year is about 7%, and those who finish school is about 5%, and then those who add years of schooling is about 33%. Okay, and then the effect of having father who finish secondary education is about 7% in full sample. And then in full sample in terms of return to the next year. And then in terms of finish school is about 5%. In terms of years of schooling is about 26%. And then this is the effect of age. And then, this is the effect of locked income per capita for the household, I would assume. About 9% in terms of return to the next year, about 23% in terms of finish school, and 78% in terms of years of schooling. But the conclusion here is Jensen conclude that better information can have effect on the school enrollment, okay? Because if they have better information regarding return to schooling, then they will more likely to go to school. And those conclusion or those intervention and research is built based on this data, the difference income in different level of education. So other RCT that evaluates information campaign. So this is other RCT in different papers that do something like Jensen did here. This is, we have Jensen 2012 information on the job opportunities to educated young women and helping them access job opportunities. So information regarding job opportunities to young women is proven to increase in female education and delays in marriage and fertility. And then information on return to education and career counseling service by Loyalka et al. 2013. It said that there is no impact on high school participation. And then career counseling treatment increase school dropouts and reduce test score. Why? You have to read in the paper to be able to explain why. But Loyalka here find that the career counseling treatment increase school dropouts and reduce test score. Okay, I'm seriously saying that you have to read the paper to be able to explain that. And then the third one is information on providing information to students and parents about students' learning level. This is the intervention that is done by Dizondros 2016 and Boba and Friasco 2016. And then the last one, information on school quality in competitive education markets by Andrabi et al. 2015. It showed that it increased mean test score by 0.11 standard deviation. Okay. Okay, so apparently the slide is quite short. So if you have any question, please ask me. You sure you don't have questions? Some of you seem to be interested in education. Well, this is the part one of education. This is from the demand side. On Friday, we will still talk about education. We have 2 meetings for education. And then I will not give you homework until week 7, but you have to prepare for presentation regarding the progress of your project. Okay, so for the next week and then the following after next week, it's going to be you doing presentation. And because we have I don't know, 10 students maybe or less than 10. We will divide that into 2 weeks of presentation. I will tell you the the urutan of the presentation later, maybe this Friday. So please be prepared. And also the material to be presented, I will tell you in detail. I will give you some leading question, so you can answer that question and then present what is the progress of your project. Okay? You have anything to confirm with me?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, if you are seriously having no question, then honestly, I will finish here because that's all.
Ma'am?
Yes, please.
Actually, I have a question regarding the project.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that in the previous assignment, you asked us to write about the summary of our project. Is it possible to upgrade our project, because regarding my project, I found out that the variables that I'm going to use is the data is not available on the internet. So is it okay to change the variable and the variable itself, but it is the independent variable that I'm going to change? Is that okay?
Okay, thank you, Helga. It's okay to improve from your current summary as long as you do not change the topic. So the topic stay the same, but if you want to improve or improvise the independent variable or maybe even the method, if you find a better method, you can do that. Okay?
Just to confirm it, so as long as the topic stays the same, like for example, employment or health sector, that's okay to change to upgrade the variable.
Yep, it's okay. Oh, and also you are free to change, but I hope if you change from your summary that you submit, you explain that in the presentation why you change it. Okay?
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Sorry, I muted myself.
It's okay. Okay, is there any more question? No? Okay, if you don't have question, then I will finish for today. I will see you this Friday. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Miss.